This is the Detroit Pistons dancing usher. My name is Shannon. And when I'm not at the Palace, I'm listening to Detroit Sports Podcast. Log in, listen in, have some fun with us. Love this group. Love the station.
All I want to know if you got your popcorn ready. Do you got your popcorn ready?
All day, every day.
Good morning, my neighbors!
That's why these two guys here, these are the men I want as my friends. They're the new blood.
All right, everyone. Welcome to episode 67 of the Detroit Sports Podcast. I am the Doc, John Macaroon.
You're the future of our business.
Joining me, my favorite co-host, Adam the Jock Strozinski.
No? You're really weird.
What's up, cuz? What's happening? You doing good today?
Just trying to pick my heart up off the floor here. These Lions ripped it out of me this past weekend. I feel like this was a real winnable game. I know you've got some thoughts. I've got some thoughts. So let's, I guess, just jump right into this and let's maybe have some therapy.
We got a lot to get to on this podcast. Adam and I got a couple things in the works. Hopefully we have a chance to interview some big names in sports in this podcast. We're not sure yet. I think what happens, cuz, is we book a guest, and then they start researching Adam Strozinski, and they go to your Facebook, and they start seeing you dancing at weddings, and then they're like, oh, should I really show up on that podcast?
Taylor Swift
before
real loud.
Before we get to the Lions, I know we got to talk about their third loss of the season, but I have a question for you.
Sure.
You're at the wedding. Mm-hmm. I see you dancing. Your wife posted a video.
Mm-hmm.
How many times have you seen the movie Hitch? Because based on your dance, you were in the pocket. You were just right there in the pocket. No moving to the left, no moving to the right. You were just, as I wish you guys could see me, you were just holding a drink in your hand, but you were in the pocket. Like you had the pocket locked down. Like you knew you couldn't have, it looked like you had no rhythm, but it looked like you knew, I'm a white boy, I just got to sit here and just stay in the pocket.
I just own the pocket, man. That's all I can do. The funny thing is, like 3 days prior to the wedding, I had watched that clip of that exact clip that you're talking about. I had watched it on YouTube. So yeah, I stayed in the pocket, man. It's what you got to do. What else can you do?
And then finally, to recap this wedding thing that you went to, did you really ask the DJ to play some Justin Timberlake? And
you know it.
And what look did he give you when you go up to him and you're like, yo, can you play some Justin?
Just hit me with the truth now. Girl, you're more than welcome to. So give me one good reason, baby, come on.
Is he looking at you funny, or how does he respond to that?
Yeah, so I go up to him like, yo, can you play anything by Justin? I don't even care what it is. Anything by Justin. And he just kind of takes a step back, squinches up his face. You know, like how when you get like you furrow your eyebrows and everything kind of comes in on your nose and you get like 6 lines in your forehead. He's like, Timberlake? I'm like, who else? No, I want Bieber. Get the hell out of here. Of course, Timberlake. What the hell's the matter with you, guy? He was like, yeah, I got you. Next thing you know, he plays the worst song ever by Justin Timberlake. He plays, what is it, like Mirrors or whatever it is with Jay-Z. Like, Jay-Z's all over it, slopping up the song. Like, just play Justin Timberlake, bro. Just play Justin Timberlake. It's all. Play Sexy Back. Play Cry Me a River. Play anything by Justin. Just, I don't need Jay-Z slopping it up.
Yeah, so nowadays with DJs, you got to be specific. You got to tell them what song to play. Because otherwise, they're going to probably play something with a beat, something with some hip-hop in it. Because music nowadays, most of the artists blend hip-hop in their songs together. So, but you had a good time over the weekend?
Upset.
You had a good time last weekend?
Oh, dude, I had a great time. The wedding I went to was phenomenal. Jack and Erica, you guys did a great job. It was a great wedding. I had a blast. Thank you for inviting me and Lorraine. Weekend was fun. It was a good time, man.
And then the Lions game hit. And it was kind of one of those games where I think the Lions got a little overconfident. But at the same time, I can't sit here and legitimately knock the Lions too much. Yes, there's a lot to get to, a lot to critique, but all credit to Arizona. they came in ranked as the number 2 defense, and they held us to 6 points. Now, granted, the Lions really did a lot of things to shoot themselves in the foot. Third down play calls were questionable, not utilizing your targets effectively, and it just looked like it was one of those games where we just didn't get into rhythm. And once Arizona got out to a 14-0 lead, we were crawling back, and the Lions just couldn't muster together significant drives. It really is just one of those games where you realize you just don't have it. And it was evident early on that the Lions were not going to play their A-plus game. Lots of penalties, lots of mistakes, and it just looked like the game plan that was established wasn't good enough to win that game. And a lot of people that I talked to and a lot of people that messaged us kind of said, it doesn't look like the Lions' game plan for the offense is specific to a certain team. It kind of looks like that they just do what they do despite whoever they're playing, and if they execute it, they execute it. But I just think in this situation versus the number 2 ranked defense, you had to try some different things. They didn't try anything. I mean, they tried that reverse to Golden Tate. They got 8 yards, and they don't go back to it. They don't run it again. And it just looked like they were stymied by Arizona, and when they realized, hey, we don't got any answers, then that was a wrap. And you lose the game 14-6. In this day and age, cuz, to score only 6 points, it really shows how the offense for the Lions is struggling, and it was really disappointing.
I really feel like the Lions made that Arizona defense look much better than what it might actually be. That was the 30th ranked pass defense, and the Lions made them look like they were number 1 with all kinds of asterisks next to their name. The Lions just shot themselves in the foot. They did not look creative. They didn't utilize Golden Tate to the best of his abilities, which is now becoming an issue. This is something that we had discussed. When Calvin Johnson comes back, will they still go to Golden Tate? And obviously they're not. They can't run the football. I don't know if this is more an issue with Matt Stafford just not grasping the playbook, if it's just a new coordinator, if this offensive line is that banged up that they can't sit there and protect Stafford. But this offense needs to be reworked. Something has to change. Jim Caldwell came out in his press conference basically said that he's going to now take more of a hands-on approach with this offense, and I hope that's a good thing, and I hope that this gets some results, because this offense hasn't looked good since week 1 when they went up against a very bad New York Giants team. Other than that, they've looked very bad. Very bad through, what is this now? We're going into week 12 of the season. This has been the biggest frustration all season long is this offense. This defense, we didn't think we could lean on and count on. We thought this defense was going to be a problem. Instead, the defense is the only thing that we can actually hang our hats on right now, because this offense, which is loaded with weapons, just loaded with weapons, chocked full of them, can't move the ball, can't put points on the board, can't score, and at this point, I think it all kind of falls at the feet of this coordinator. I'm not going to sit there and I'm not going to say it's Matt Stafford's fault, because we've seen Matt Stafford go out there. We've seen him put up 5,000 yards. We've seen him have 40-plus touchdown seasons. We've seen this guy go out there and actually do these things. I'm going to put this on the coordinator. I'm going to put this on Joe Lombardi. Joe Lombardi either has to come up with something new, has to reinvent the wheel on the fly, or just has to put this team in a better position to win. I don't care if you got to shuffle this offensive line. I don't care if you got to draw up better plays. I don't care if you sit there and you take a freaking stick and you go and you draw up some plays in the sand. You've got to do something to generate some offense. You need to start putting points on the board. This defense is the only thing that is carrying you through this season thus far. You need to put points on the board. And what you're doing right now just isn't going to cut it.
Yeah, and something that you notice regularly and something that we all talk about is the tempo of the offense. Teams nowadays can scheme for you. It's not that difficult. There's film. These teams across the league have great access to film. And so you got to do things to mix things up. And so, but what the Lions did, huddle, let the play clock go all the way down, hike the ball, run a play. There was no creativity. There was nothing. And then at the same time, it's quite evident that the Lions at the end of halves have no sense of urgency. They just let the clock run down. They don't move the ball. They don't generate that rhythm on offense. And it was shown that Matthew Stafford thrives in situations where he can move the ball quicker, he can snap the ball, he can catch the defense off guard. He has that strength. He can run a 2-minute drill. And the fact of the matter is, I don't think that, and I agree with you, I don't think that the offensive game plan is conducive to his strengths. But at the same time, I think Matthew Stafford being in his 6th year, and I wrote about it in a blog on our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. Aaron Rodgers, in his 6th season back in 2010, won the Super Bowl. And he had great numbers, and he had over 100 QB rating. Right now, Matthew Stafford is only sitting at 85, and his completion percentage is only about 61%. That needs to be around 70 for this team to be successful. And what they're really doing is very vanilla. Most of the passes are in that 6 to 10 yard range, which is quite surprising given that you have Calvin Johnson. You have to open up the offense by going deep a little bit more. Now, yes, Peterson was on him like white on rice. You know that. He was pressing him. He was giving him a lot of different looks. But you got Eric Ebron. You got Golden Tate. You had Fourier playing back in his first game. You didn't use him. And then we have the comparison to Drew Stanton, who was spraying the ball all over the field. 10 different targets. Stanton
has no problem throwing that ball down the field either. He doesn't even care. He'll throw it into triple coverage. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, now while, yes, we can't say, okay, Drew Stanton versus Matthew Stafford because they're not playing on the field at the same time. But you kind of saw early on he was ready to go, and he took the chances deep, and that befuddled the Lions early on. So why can't the Lions do that? What is it in terms of the game plan, or what is it that they're seeing that they're not willing to maybe take a few more chances in these games early on? And you're going to have to, this week, going up against New England, if you don't drop 30 points, I would almost say by the second quarter the game could be out of hand. Because New England is on fire. I think they were thoroughly insulted by the league dissing them and everyone saying that Brady and Belichick are done. And since then, they've been on an epic roll on offense. So this team, this Lions team, has to score. But at the same time, I agree with you that the offensive game plan has been an issue, but I think a little bit of the responsibility has to be on Matthew Stafford too. He needs to get these drives moving, and he needs to, once he sees a play that can be changed, he needs to check into the right play. And some of the throws, again, missed the target, and he's not helping the receivers out. Matthew Stafford has to play better, he has to be more consistent, and he has to help this team down the line. But let's pump the brakes. We're 7-3. It's not all bad. It was a tough game on the road. I can see that. This upcoming game versus New England, I'm going to be watching to see how they respond to a tough loss. And I don't think that this is going to spiral. I don't think that they're going to win the game versus New England, but I don't think they're going to play as bad and have as many turnovers. They're not going to make as many mistakes this weekend versus New England as they did versus Arizona.
You know what my biggest issue with Sunday's game was? There was 30 seconds left in the second quarter, and it was 4th and 2 from the 6. They sit there, they go to the line, and they try to draw Arizona offsides. Arizona doesn't budge. They then take a timeout and they send the field goal unit out. Why not show some balls? Why not beat your chest a little bit and go out there and run a play? There's 30 seconds left in the half. I know getting 6 points helps you, but in the end, did it really help you all that much? You ended up losing 14-6, so it didn't help you at all. Go out there, run a play, try to get a touchdown, try to get some momentum, because then you come back out at halftime and you get the ball back. So try to carry that momentum over from halftime and get that back onto the field. Why not try to do something like that? Instead, you sit there and you settle for a field goal. Put some trust in your offense. Put some trust in your quarterback. Put some trust in the guy who's supposed to lead you. He's in his 6th year. Put some trust in this guy. I know, like you said, he hasn't done a great job this season. He looks very average right now. Like you said, his QBR is 85. That's horrible. It's not good at all, right? But put some trust in this guy. Get some momentum. Get these guys believing in themselves, because they looked beleaguered that first half. They didn't look good at all that first half.
What the hell is that about?
But they get the ball to the 6-yard line, and you have to settle for a field goal. That's a big kick in the nuts. Sit there, run a play. Run something. You've got wide receivers who tower over everybody else on the field. Run a goddamn play and score a touchdown. That's all you have to do. Carry that momentum in to halftime and then come out at the half and sit there and get some more points, whether you settle for 3 or whether you get 7. Instead, you come out at half and then you've got to sit there and you punt the ball away because you can't do anything. You have no momentum because you had to settle for a field goal. Run a damn play. Jim Caldwell, run a damn play. Get in Joe Lombardi's face and tell him to come up with something creative. He's supposed to be this offensive guru, this quarterback mastermind. Figure it out. Do something. Instead, you do nothing. You get 3 points, you go in at half, and then when you come out at the half, you sit there and you punt the ball. And that's all it was basically from there on in. It was just exchanging punts. It was awful. An awful, awful game.
Now let me ask you this. While you and I totally do not have any faith in Reggie Bush, do you think his absence has really hindered this offense? I mean, the screen game wasn't that effective. The running game, obviously not that effective. So I think in reference to the play that you're talking about, I don't think he was confident that they could get it versus that defense because Arizona was obviously going to stack the box. And at that point, it was only 14-3, knowing that they've had some comebacks in the second half where they make adjustments. So I think at that point, yes, you could have taken a chance, and albeit that was the only trip to the red zone. One trip to the red zone the entire game, that's outlandish. That really, in this day and age, the NFL has basically laid out that this is an offensive league. They're calling penalties on secondary players in order to boost the offense. So I think that the Lions were confident that they could have made the adjustments at halftime and come back in the second half. That's why they didn't do it. But you needed to realize that if you took a chance there, it's a risk-reward type of thing. And I agree with you. They should have taken a chance and threw a pass in the end zone. But something that I want to ask you about is the lack of having Reggie Bush being consistently in the lineup. While you and I don't have confidence in him, he does open things up. And when he's not in the game, you do notice a difference.
You've got a player who's very similar to Reggie Bush and Theo Riddick, a guy who can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's a little bit bigger, not as fast. Use Theo Riddick. Where was Theo Riddick this whole entire game? You hardly ever heard his name called. Where was Theo Riddick? Why didn't his number get called? Use him. He works great in little screenplays where he just kind of rolls out into the flat and just kind of sits down in a soft spot of the zone. He works out great because the guy can catch the ball and then he can move the ball. That would work out perfect in a play like we're just talking about where it's 4th and 2 from the 6. That guy will probably get into the end zone. You've seen him do it time and time again. He won you a damn football game a week ago. So why not use him again? Why wasn't his number called? Joy Bell looked really good out there. He was sitting there going beast mode a few times, sitting there hurdling guys. He looked good, but still not consistent enough. You know, I don't think Reggie Bush being out of lineup really hinders this offense. I don't, because I think what you're going to get from Reggie Bush, you can get from a guy like Theo Riddick. He's just not as fast. He's a little bit more of a power back. Whereas Reggie Bush is probably going to get hauled down by the first tackler. I think Theo Riddick will sit there and power through the first guy, maybe get drugged down by the second guy. I don't see that argument actually coming into play here. I just don't think that the offensive play calling is utilizing these players and putting them in the best spot to make plays to help this team win games. And I think that's the big issue. Joe Lombardi has to take a real good look at what he's doing out there and what he's installing every week. And Jim Caldwell now has to put his hands in the mix here, and he really has to help shape this offense because I think Joe Lombardi might be in a little bit over his head. I think it's time we start talking about that. You know, I don't know if he's going to be ousted from his offensive coordinator position, but if there was a coach to do it, it'd probably be this guy. I mean, if you think about it, what did Jim Caldwell do with that Baltimore Ravens team that won a Super Bowl? He was an offensive assistant. Basically, they kicked out Cam Cameron. He took over and helped lead that team to a Super Bowl. So he's familiar with something like that. He could do something like that. So if something like that does happen, don't be surprised. But I think it's time that we maybe start looking at Joe Lombardi as being part of the issue here and maybe not part of the solution. And I know it's really early in his tenure. He's only his first year. But you got to start asking questions because this offense was very potent last year, the season before that, and the season before that even. And now they have trouble scoring more than 20 points a game.
Now, I look at it a little bit differently. I think right now Jim Caldwell is involved heavily in the offense.
You believe that?
I believe that, yeah. What? Because he is the offensive guy. You think he's just going to let Lombardi run the entire ship? No, I think he lets Lombardi make the play calls. He doesn't overrule him too much. But I do think that he has a hand in the scheme and he has a hand in terms of the offensive package because Terrell Austin seems to have complete control of the defense. He's on point. That's a given. 14 points. They've consistently played well, and they've earned their number 1 ranking on defense. So what is Jim Caldwell working on during the week?
Jim Caldwell strikes me as a guy who's not going to come in. He's not going to step on your toes. He puts you in a position because he believes in you, and he trusts in your work. So he's going to let you do what you have to do to help this team out. And if he needs to, or if you come to him, he'll then step in. But I don't really foresee him exerting any pressure on anybody in that coaching staff. I think he just kind of puts you in position, and he might overrule you during the game saying, no, I don't like that play, come up with a new one. But I don't ever see him sitting there developing plays, working on plays, going in there, being almost like a Sean Payton who basically installs the entire playbook. I don't see that happening.
And something that is now being noticed by a lot of people, a lot of fans, the penalties. Even though he preached being disciplined, the Lions have been racking up penalties the last couple weeks, and they haven't been good ones. They're creeping back up there. Earlier in the season, they weren't as detrimental, but it was quite evident that the penalties took a toll in the first half versus Arizona. Now, a couple things in terms of the offense, in terms of looking at how to improve it. Do you think the Lions could be in the market for some of the running backs that have been excommunicated from the league? I mean, Tuesday, earlier in the week, was like Black Friday for some running backs. LeGarrette Blount, axed. Ben Tate, axed. Adrian Peterson, suspended, but could be on appeal. Ray Rice is still out there. Do you think the Lions could be in the market for another running back, given the fact that they might want to make a playoff push, and the running game in the playoffs is super important? Just look at a team like Pittsburgh. Le'Veon Bell single-handedly carries that team and puts up massive numbers and is a big reason why they're successful. So the run game, I think, is one area you look to first in terms of how you can control games, how you can improve this offense, is by single-handedly improving the running game, and the Lions could use an upgrade at that position.
I think you maybe go and kick the tires on a guy like a Ben Tate. I wouldn't go after LeGarrette Blount. I think there's too many red flags there. The guy's basically on his third or fourth team earlier in the year before the season even started. He got popped for smoking marijuana.
Exactly, and you know what's been happening now? DEA rolled up into the Lions locker room and into several other NFL locker rooms because some former players alleged that, the teams have been given pills illegally to the players and haven't been exactly ethical in terms of the medical policy. So the DEA shows up in a handful of teams. Could you imagine the Lions pick up LeGarrette Blount, and it's after a game, after a big win, and all of a sudden DEA shows up and there's LeGarrette Blount smoking a joint in the locker room, going to town, and they'd be like, "What are you doing?" All of a sudden, after the great win, you hear DEA arrest LeGarrette Blount from the Lions locker room.
That's the one reason why you don't bring that guy in.
So Blount is off the market.
Yeah, I would probably, I'd like I said, I'd kick the tires on like a guy like Ben Tate. I think Ben Tate is a good character guy. I think he'd fit in well with what Jim Caldwell wants to do, and I think he has some tread left on his tires. I think he can produce if put in the right system.
What happened with Ben Tate? Why did he get cut?
I think it's just a numbers game. Mm-hmm. They have 3 or 4 different running backs over there that they kind of cycle through, and they tend to go with the hot hand, and Ben Tate just has kind of struggled to gain a foothold there. He kind of was donned the number 1 running back there to start the season, and he's just kind of lost that footing throughout the season. So I think it was just a numbers game. It was a salary cap issue. They gave him, I think it was like $7.5 million was his contract. So why not save some money against the cap, let him go? And I really just think it was a numbers game with him.
Okay, so see, and you saw in the game versus Arizona, they blitzed like no other. They basically dared Stafford to beat them throwing. And the reason why the running game was insufficient and ineffective on Sunday, a team like Arizona blitzes, they have a lot of men up front. So a lot of times the play calls that were called weren't effective because Arizona was just there. They had a lot of matchups that favored them. So in those situations, Stafford had to basically check out of those plays and throw to his receivers. And unfortunately, he didn't do it quite often enough. And the Arizona defense, give them credit, they won out. And that's really why you saw a guy like Golden Tate only get 2 touches. Calvin wasn't that great. And it's just it really sucked. That game just really stunk all around. But you have to it's a combination of Arizona's great, really efficient defensive scheme and the Lions' woes on offense really contributed to their loss because they only lost 14-6. So that really should give them confidence that, hey, they can go on the road in a tough environment. Something that they have to do on defense, they have to start a little faster. Because in the games they've lost, the defense has started really slow and given up a lot of points early. It's not sometimes how many points you give up, but when you give them up. And the Lions started on defense pretty slow. And in big games, you got to come out firing. And especially this week versus New England, if you're down 21-0, you're not coming back. So
do you think Lombardi starts this week in the no huddle? Do you think that this offense goes out there and just basically just runs to the line and just picks up, go? Because that's the one thing we've talked about the last couple weeks. This team works better with a tempo. They work better upbeat, up pace. You kind of seen it when they don't do it, man.
You know what?
It's disastrous.
Bill Belichick's a genius, and this is just one of those games where if you really look at it, I'm not really feeling comfortable that I don't think that they're going to have enough to win the game. I think that Bill Belichick's going to come up with a masterful scheme. He's going to be able to confuse Matthew Stafford, and I think if the Lions are going to win, they're going to have to get some turnovers from Tom Brady because he throws the ball quite a bit. So if they can get a couple pick sixes, maybe 1 touchdown drive, I'm going to say this, if the defense doesn't score this week for the Lions, they don't win. I think that, my opinion is that the offense is going to continue to struggle, especially on the road. In that environment, they're 5-0. New England is 5-0 at home this year, and I don't think that the Lions are going to go in there and win. That's just my opinion. And I think even if they go no huddle, I don't think the Lions are going to get in the end zone all that often.
So can I give you a little bit of news real quick?
Oh, news. Breaking news.
A little bit of breaking news here. We are going to get Freddie Coleman on here. Ooh. So just got a message from him. He's going to be coming on the show here shortly. So you guys want to stick around for that.
Great news. Freddie Coleman from ESPN. I'm quite shocked. I'm really, you did good work, cuz you worked it, and we got Freddie Coleman from ESPN on the show. Next, stay tuned.
On the phone with us now, we have the host of the Freddie Coleman Show on ESPN Radio, heard locally on 105.1 from 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. Freddie Coleman, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, gentlemen. How are you guys today?
Oh, we can't complain. Everything is good. We got you on the phone. Come on now.
Oh, well, I appreciate those kind words, and thank you very much. Looking forward to doing this with you guys today.
So let's just jump right into it. What are your thoughts on the AP saga?
Saga is a very good word to use that question, because it's going to be a continuing saga. Because if you're Adrian Peterson, you feel that, okay, I served my sentence, and if you're going to suspend me without pay, well, you know I'm going to fight for my right to be on the football field. But I think the NFL should have legitimate concerns if Adrian Peterson has learned his lesson about the way he's disciplining his kids, or has disciplined his kids. So if you're the National Football League, especially with everything so hypersensitive based on player conduct off the football field, sometimes it's better to err on that side of, you know what, we're going to take you off the field for a little bit. If you want to appeal and try to get back on the field, then we'll let somebody else, an independent arbitrator, make that kind of decision, and then we'll live with the decision. But if you're the National Football League, this has been a long time coming, that they kind of pushed this under the rug for the longest of times because they wanted their players on the field more often than any other time. And now they know that those days are over. They can't get away with that, and they should not have gotten away with that long before anything happened with Adrian Peterson or Greg Hardy of the Carolina Panthers or Ray Rice of the Baltimore Ravens. Maybe now, from this point on, it'll be a different NFL in terms of letting the players know that being on this field is a privilege. It's not a right. It's not something that you have to have, especially you continue to run afoul of things outside of the football field.
Do you feel like Roger Goodell is trying to basically atone for the Ray Rice situation by handling out these extra harsh punishments now?
Well, he's always handed out extra harsh punishments to players before. Many players felt that it was unfair that he was judge and jury. I think Roger Goodell is going to do everything possible to make sure that he will continue to protect the shield. But I think more than ever before, it's not just going to be a judge and jury decision by him. He's going to really have to bring in other people to help him make those decisions. Or maybe from this point on, maybe somebody else outside of the offices of the National Football League and the National Football League Players Association is going to have to be heavy-handed when it comes to making those decisions. And the players brought this on themselves in a way, because they could have negotiated a better deal in the collective bargaining agreement when it came to player discipline, but they wanted to get back on the field and get the money because they didn't want to be locked out by the National Football League and the teams involved in it. So the players are really concerned about player conduct and making sure that everybody was going to be on the right side. And let's be honest, guys, these are just a few players. Not everybody in the National Football League is a bad apple. But they could have done a better job of making sure that Roger Goodell was not just going to be the only guy in charge of these player disciplines. They could have put that in their hands if they were DeMaurice Smith, the leader of the NFL Players Association, and other NFL players.
All right, Jay Gruden came out and basically had some really harsh words for RG3, basically telling him to mind his own business and focus on himself and get his own play right. Do you like that Jay Gruden came out and basically called his quarterback out?
Yeah, because his quarterback not only called himself out, and I didn't have a problem with what RG3 had to say in terms of we don't have Pro Bowl players on this team. He could have chosen a better way to say that by saying we're not a good football team right now, and that starts with me at the quarterback position. And he even put himself in that category of I'm not playing at a Pro Bowl level. But I also applauded Jay Gruden for saying, you know what, dude, why don't you make yourself a better player and I'll worry about the other players. He is not going to have the same kind of scandal-like situation that we saw last year with the Shanahans versus RG3. Jay Gruden is of the ilk that he waited a long time to get this position to be a head coach in the NFL. He's not going to let one player undermine that for whatever reason that is. So if RG3 thinks he's going to win this power struggle, I think he's sadly mistaken, because Jay Gruden let it be known. He may be RG3, he may have the ear of Daniel Snyder, but Daniel Snyder wants me to be the head coach, which means he wants me to be the boss, and I am the boss. And if you don't like it, RG3, then you know what? We'll find out exactly what's the power of this organization. So RG3 wasn't speaking an untruth. He just spoke about it in a way that should not have been spoken about. But at the same time, I applaud Jay Gruden for letting him know, dude, you can't call out teammates in addition to yourself. That's my job. you go out and play football and be a better quarterback and start with that.
Now, Freddie, I'm curious to get your opinion. A lot of talk around the league and a lot of talk in that locker room is RG3 may be concerned more about his brand, his image, than his play on the field. Speak to that, and do you think RG3 can develop into a serviceable quarterback in the NFL?
Well, I don't know what's going on in that locker room. I'm not a big believer in hearsay and innuendo, but I think there is sort of a disconnect there, whether it's between RG3 and the coaches or RG3 and his teammates, whatever that is, because I didn't hear one teammate speak up in RG3's defense. So there may be something to that, even though we really don't have concrete evidence. I think when it comes to RG3 being a serviceable quarterback, I still wonder about that myself, because I think RG3 and everybody who supports him or everybody who has not supported him, we go back to that first year in the National Football League where he tore the league apart, and he had the highest quarterback rating for a rookie in the history of the National Football League and led that Washington team to a division championship. But people also have to remember this. He has not played a full season in the NFL at any given time in his career. He's always going to be injury prone because of the way he plays. And if he's not able to realize that and try to harness that great athletic ability but being a serviceable quarterback, then this is what we're going to get from RG3, where he's going to tease us plenty of times with his ability to just about make any throw and make plays and make those exciting plays. But his kind of style does not lead to longevity at the quarterback position. So as long as he continues to play that way, this is what we're going to get from RG3, whether he stays in Washington or goes somewhere else. That kind of style, as somebody said, I've seen a lot of young running quarterbacks. I've never seen a lot of old running quarterbacks. John Elway was a guy that ran a lot when he was younger, but he learned quickly to play the quarterback position the right way, and he wound up having a Hall of Fame career. RG3 has Hall of Fame athletic ability, but there's no question in my mind he's not a Hall of Fame type quarterback, especially playing that way.
All right, Freddie, on Sunday, our Detroit Lions flew out to Arizona and played what was billed as the battle for the NFC. It was kind of a lackluster game, especially after the first quarter. What were your thoughts and what was your takeaway from the Detroit-Arizona game?
Well, I don't know about lackluster because I know people look at that and say the Detroit Lions only scored 6 points, but remember this. The Arizona Cardinals defense is outstanding. Todd Bowles is a terrific defensive coordinator, and they're doing this without arguably their best defensive player in Darnell Dockett, who ruptured his Achilles before the season got started. And they lost Calais Campbell, maybe their third best defensive player with Patrick Peterson in the middle of those guys. They lost him for a time, and now he's back. But their defense is outstanding, and the one thing I love about Arizona is that they have belief in their head coach. They believe that Bruce Arians is always going to have them well prepared. And I think Detroit was well prepared early on. The one problem I had was that having Calvin Johnson back, it seemed like Matthew Stafford was trying to force the ball to him way too much. And even Calvin Johnson had a couple of drops of catches that he normally makes. I think they have to continue to spread the football around because Golden Tate's been terrific. Reggie Bush is going to come back and play at running back this week along with Bell, so now to get another weapon to help that offense. But I'm not going to say that they were lackluster because the Cardinals are very, very good. They have a 9-1 record for a reason. They are the best team right now in the National Football League, and they went out there defensively and showed that against the Detroit Lions.
Freddie, I feel like you live in Detroit. You're basically seeing this game with a set of Detroit eyes because we've been saying the same thing. You can't force field Calvin Johnson all the time. You got to spread that ball around.
Right, and you have a guy like that he's a home run hitter, no question about it. He needs his touches. But other guys have been able to step up. So the more you're able to spread the ball around, guess what's going to happen? At a certain point, you're going to get one-on-one coverage against Calvin Johnson. And there's not a cornerback in this league that will successfully cover him one-on-one and think they're going to have a lot of success. Hopefully for the Detroit Lions, that Matthew Stafford has learned that, saying, you know what, I'm glad that Megatron is back. But we have other guys on this team that can help him, whether it's Golden Tate or Eric Ebron, anybody else. The offensive line has played a lot better for the Detroit Lions. It's up to Matthew Stafford now as a general of this team to make sure we're going to get the ball to our playmakers, but we can't sacrifice other playmakers to make Calvin Johnson feel comfortable. He's going to feel comfortable because he has a kind of talent. You don't need to force feed him because you have a lot of guys in that football team that can help you out.
All right, speaking of Matt Stafford, basically since Sunday afternoon, the city's been burning down, and there's been a lynch mob out for Matt Stafford to hang him up. What factors can help this offense improve? Because it's been desolate. Besides that 35-point showing against the Giants in Week 1, which the Giants are kind of a bad product, this offense has struggled all season.
That's a great question, and I think the one thing Detroit needs to have happen is what is their identity going to be, whether it's for the season or what for any given game. It seems like at times I think they outsmart themselves where something is working and then they go away from it. You look at a team like the Dallas Cowboys. They pretty much have told you we're going to run the football. Yeah, we got Tony Romo, we got Des Bryant, but our success is going to be running the ball behind this great offensive line We're not going to take that away from us. It's up to you to take it away. They have that identity. The Kansas City Chiefs, they may not be a dazzling team, but they're not going to turn over the ball a lot. They're going to play solid. They're going to have a solid run game. They're going to have a quick, short passing game. They're going to try to eat up as much clock as possible. If they don't score, they're going to put your defense on. They're going to put your offense on a long field, and their defense are going to try to get them a short field. Detroit seems to me that they'll have an identity for a series or maybe a couple plays in that series. Then they get away from what works, and that can't happen, especially when you got Green Bay coming up. We know their identity. Aaron Rodgers is going to be our guy, but we're going to run the football enough for Eddie Lacy. It's up to you to stop it. That's the one question I have about the Lions. What is their identity? Because right now I think that offense, as good as it's been at times, has an identity crisis, and they can only solve it by coming out and saying, this is our game plan, we're going to stick to the game plan, and we're not going to go away from it.
Speaking of Green Bay, how do these Lions compare to the Packers? Is there any comparison at all?
No, because right now Aaron Rodgers is playing better than any quarterback in the National Football League, but Dom Capers has really kind of saved his job in a way by the different things he's done on defense, where he's moved Clay Matthews into the inside, and then he can move them all around the place at linebacker. They've been able to stay relatively healthy along the front defensive line for this 3-4 defense, so that's really helped. But offensively, it seems like no matter what question you throw at them, they have the answer. No matter what problem you throw at them, they have a solution. Andrew Rodgers does not a throw in this league in this game that he can't make. But you have Jordy Nelson, you have Randall Cobb, you have Richard Rodgers, you have Andrew Corliss. He has so many different guys that he can throw to, and then all of a sudden he'll make a throw, he tops off the defense, and they get the ball down the field for a big, quick striking touchdown. Right now, that offense, especially playing at home, they continue to play that way. They're an NFC favorite because I don't think any team, I don't care who it is, I don't care if it's Arizona, I don't care if it's Seattle, I don't care if it's San Francisco or Detroit, you're not going to go into their building in January and beat them with the playoffs on the line, especially if they continue to play that way. So right now, Detroit just a little bit behind the Green Bay Packers because their offense has struggled, but their defense has bailed them out. On the other side for Green Bay, their offense has been so good, the defense says, hell, if we get 21 points, it doesn't matter. That guy over there is going to get 45, and we're going to blow teams out.
Does it seem like, maybe it's just me, but it seems like ever since the Lions beat Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers has kind of been on a tear. He's just been upset, and he wants to basically send a message to everybody in the league. Is that just my perspective, or do you kind of see that as well?
Oh, no, that's completely everybody's perspective because we all remember that Monday, that Tuesday, after they lost to Detroit, and everybody was saying the sky is falling in Green Bay, and Aaron Rodgers looked at everybody and said, R-E-L-A-X, relax, everything's going to be fine. That was a message not just to the media, but to his team to say, guys, it's only 3 games into the season. We're not that far away. We lost to Detroit on the road. We know they're a good football team. We lost to Seattle opening day. They were defending world champions. We're going to be fine. And what has happened? They've only lost 1 game since, and that's till the Saints played out of their minds on the Sunday Night Football game at home in New Orleans. Other than that, they've been able to beat Miami on the road. They've scored 50 points in back-to-back games. They took apart the Philadelphia Eagles. And I don't care if Mark Sanchez and Nick Foles was being the quarterback. They would not have been able to hang with them. So it's not just you with that perception. Ever since that day where he told everybody to relax, he's gone out there and he has completely lit up the league.
Do you think that the NFC North is going to come down to that final game between Detroit and Green Bay?
Yes, because I still think Green Bay has enough in their offense, but they still have to play the Patriots. That's not going to be an easy game. I know Minnesota's not a great team, but division games are always tough to win. That's not going to be an easy game for them, even if they play at a high level. So it wouldn't surprise me if there's only 1 game or no games separating both of those teams when they meet in the final day of the season in Green Bay. I hope it's snowing. I hope there are Christmas lights around. I think there's going to be that kind of atmosphere at Lambeau Field. But I think that division won't be decided until both of those teams play each other the last December Sunday of the season.
The New England Patriots and the Lions are meeting up this Sunday. How do you see this shaking out?
We talk about teams playing terrific, and the Patriots have found their identity. They're like, look, our offensive line is healthy. I mean, Solder's been great at the tackle position. They've been really good on the interior. All of a sudden now, having their offensive line healthy, I don't know if we're going to see 38 shades of Jonas Gray again, how great he was on Sunday versus the Colts with 199 yards and 38 carries and 4 touchdowns. But all of a sudden, their identity is back based on one guy, and that is Rob Gronkowski at tight end. When he's playing like that, all of a sudden Brandon LaFell gets a lot of yardage. Also, Julian Edelman is going to get a lot of space. He commands so much attention in the middle of the field, and he's improved his blocking skills to help out the running game. It's going to be very tough for anybody in the AFC or the NFC to beat them. And if I'm the Detroit Lions playing the Patriots this Sunday, I'm putting 2 guys on Rob Gronkowski, and I'm saying, you know what, Julian Edelman, you know what, Amendola, you know what, LaFell, you guys are going to have to beat us. We're not going to let anybody else we're not going to let Rob Gronkowski do to us what he's done to teams. And you look on defense, on the defensive side of football, what they've been able to do. Darrelle Revis is back to being Revis Island once again, shutting down everybody, playing the run extremely well. But I think Brandon Browner, a guy who's not a fast cornerback, but a very physical, very tough cornerback, he provides that toughness. Now if you're Bill Belichick, you got 2 guys on the outside that can wall off wide receivers and shut them down. Now you're really creative with your blitzes, you're really creative with your schemes, because you don't have to worry about pitching and patching because your cornerbacks are not up to snuff. Having those 2 guys doing that and making that work makes that New England defense very, very dangerous. And I think only it's going to get better as the season rolls along.
Freddie, do you think the Lions win this Sunday or no?
No, I just think the way the Patriots are playing, where all of a sudden now they have a 2-fisted attack. They lose Stephen Ridley and Jonas Gray steps up. They'll be able to have Shane Vereen as well in the running back position. Not saying Detroit can't do it, because if you're going to do it, you're going to need Matthew Stafford to play an A-plus game and outdo Tom Brady. That's going to be very hard to do against a Patriots defense, because we saw how he struggled against a Cardinals defense that threw a lot of blitzes at him and had 2 cornerbacks in Patrick Peterson and Antonio Cromartie. And really, their secondary is outstanding anyway. But they have both of those guys that are able to keep those receivers at bay and not let them make plays. If Matthew Stafford tries to get into a shootout with Tom Brady, that offense is not as good as the Patriots offense. I think it's going to be very tough for Detroit to win this ball game, because New England is relishing the fact that they're on a great run. They feel the home field advantage is right there for them, where everybody's to come to their place in the AFC in the playoffs, and they're not going to take anything for chance. They're not going to take anything for granted or leave anything to chance.
Freddie, I want to thank you for coming on the show today. We appreciate your insight on the NFL. We appreciate talking to you. I want you to know that myself and John are huge fans of you. Everybody, you can catch Freddie Coleman, the host of The Freddie Coleman Show on ESPN Radio, heard locally here on 105.1 from 10 p.m. to 1 a.m., Monday through Friday. Freddie, thank you as always for coming on and being a fan of us. We're a huge fan of you.
My pleasure, gentlemen. Let's do it again soon, because this was very, very enjoyable, and love talking football and everything else with you guys.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Take it easy. Want to say thank you to Freddie Coleman for spending some time with us and sharing your information and your knowledge on the NFL.
Cuz we are keeping the train moving, and another great guest is going to be joining us on this podcast. Mario Impemba, Tigers play-by-play voice on Fox Sports Detroit, will be joining us next, giving us his thoughts on the Tigers offseason and some hot stove issues that have been happening in Major League Baseball. Stay tuned.
I'm Megan McCormick out here in Fox Sports LA, and when I'm not sitting out in the sun, I'm listening to the Detroit Sports Podcast.
You got to check out their stuff. I mean, I'm really impressed by it. You guys have probably one of the better ones I've seen in the country.
Wow.
In a short period of time, you've done good work. Look at me kissing your hand.
I know.
All right, we have the pleasure on the Detroit Sports Podcast to have the Tigers play-by-play voice from Fox Sports Detroit. Mario Impemba joins us this evening. Mario, how are you tonight?
I'm doing great, John. Just trying to keep warm, but otherwise everything's good.
Unfortunately for us, the Tigers season ended a little too soon. Have you been enjoying yourself since the Tigers season ended?
I have. Obviously we wish we would have gone a little bit deeper in the month of October, but it didn't happen this year. A 3-game sweep, I think, surprised most of us that followed the ball club all year. But the bullpen just couldn't get it done, so we finished early, and that means our off-season starts a little bit early this year.
Yeah, and right now, around Major League Baseball, some big moves have happened, making the offseason quite interesting. Let's just start with the big news so far. Giancarlo Stanton, 13 years, $325 million deal signed by the Marlins, the biggest contract in North America. But what's interesting is it's very backloaded. He's only going to earn $30 million in the next 3 years. So if he decides to opt out, he's going to leave a lot of money on the table. Your thoughts on the biggest contract ever to be signed?
Well, John, I never thought we'd see the day we'd get to $325 million. Obviously, the Miggy deal was a pretty big one at the start of spring training last year for the Tigers. That was a 10-year deal. But, to tie yourself up to 13 seasons with one guy is obviously a risk. At $325 million, that's obviously a risk. And it was kind of odd for me, coming from an organization like the Marlins that in the past have have had a reputation of being pennant pinchers, and also, when they did put a good team together a couple of years ago, they busted it up very quickly. So it was quite odd, but I think you made a good point there in the fact that a lot of this really is backloaded. He won't see a lot of that money the first couple of years, but they've got a good young team. When we closed out the year in Miami a couple of years ago, I was impressed with a lot of the good young players they had, like Echeverria. Their shortstop I thought was very good. Obviously, they got a couple of really good starting pitchers, and Fernandez is going to be outstanding. And, Stanton is the centerpiece in the middle of their lineup. So they felt that, they had to do something like this to keep him in Miami. Is one guy worth all that kind of money, and is it worth, some payroll inflexibility, so to speak? I don't know. I mean, we'll find out in the years to come, but at least you can say this about the Marlins. They're trying.
You can definitely say that, and if he does anything, then it'll be well worth it, and he has a chance to opt out by age 30, so we could be seeing a much larger deal should he produce, and the numbers going forward could be astronomical. Also, the Atlanta Braves and Cardinals made a move. Jason Hayward, a homegrown guy from Atlanta, his contract is up next year. There weren't too many talks going forward for a long-term deal, so they ship him out to the Cardinals. Your thoughts?
Well, obviously with the death of Oscar Taveras, I think the Cardinals felt they needed some offense, and Hayward has been a guy that has been a really good big league player, but I don't know that he's actually lived up to the billing that he produced after his rookie season. I think he's a tremendous player. I think he's a really good two-way player. I think the Cardinals needed to do something to add some offense to their team, but the one thing that I really like that the Braves are doing now, and they're getting ready to move into a new stadium soon, is that they're really building a good young pitching staff now with Shelby Miller. He's only 24 years old. They've got Julio Teheran, who's only 24. Alex Wood will be 24. And Mike Minor, I guess, would be the elder statesman of their rotation at 26, 27. I'm not sure what his age is, but they're building a really good rotation. I think the Braves have always been known for pitching. It's one of those deals, I think, that when you look at it in the off-season, it's a great off-season deal because it really provided some big-name talent for both teams. I think it's going to end up being a fairly even trade once it's all said and done, but it's always nice to kick off the Hot Stove League with some names switching spots, and that's what we got this year with those guys.
Now let's turn our attention to the Detroit Tigers. Obviously a little bit disappointed this year to exit out in the first round in the divisional series, but Dave Dombrowski is looking to retool. He's brought in Gose from Toronto, and he's re-signed Victor Martinez 4 more years. Your early thoughts on the Tigers' early offseason moves?
Well, I like the Ghost move. I think the Tigers needed to find somebody that can patrol center field, and that's not to cast aspersions on Rajai Davis. I thought he did a really good job when he took over for Austin Jackson following the trade, but he's not a center fielder, and he's not an everyday center fielder. I think Ghost, despite the fact that he doesn't hit left-handed pitching all that well, does give you an element of what Gerard Dyson gave the Kansas City Royals. He can go get it in center field. He can steal some bases. He can drop down a bunt. He can obviously run. And I think those are important attributes to have, not only in center field Comerica, but really in that Tigers starting lineup. I still think, even though they got Davis over last year and Kinsler over, they still needed a little bit more speed, a little bit more excitement in their lineup. Now, the question is, will Anthony Gose hit at the big league level? He is still only 24 years of age, so I think it's a good gamble for the Tigers. We'll have to wait and see how he fits into the lineup, but they certainly, I think, had to do something for center field, and they got a good young player, and they gave up a good young player, but, Gose has had a little bit of taste of the big leagues right now, and hopefully he can take that next step.
Now, one of the up-and-coming young players, a surprise last season, was J.D. Martinez. He's earned himself a spot in the lineup. He's benefited from watching Victor Martinez hit, and Houston's loss was our gain. Speak about J.D. Martinez, and do you think he can develop into be a consistent hitter again next season?
Well, I'm still trying to figure J.D. out. I remember when he was with the Houston Astros, I thought to myself, this guy's a pretty good big league player. He's got a little bit of pop, hit 11 home runs one year, knocked in 50 or so runs with Houston, and those are decent major league numbers for a young guy. But I don't think that the Tigers ever really anticipated or dreamt the fact that he would put up the type of numbers he did last year. I mean, you kind of calculate his numbers over the course of a full major league season, and they're eye-popping. I mean, he had 23 home runs, he knocked in 76, and that's just in 441 at-bats. So I think he was a pleasant surprise. I think that sometimes you have to wonder, if it clicks in as quickly as it did for J.D., in other words, he made some tweaks in his batting stance in the offseason last year, changed his hitting style a little bit, and all of a sudden it just took off. You wonder how long that could last. And I kept thinking to myself, all right, it's a good start 1 month into the year. All right, it's a really good start now 2 months into the year. And then when he did it for the rest of the second half, it started to make you believe that this kid can do it on a consistent basis. Now, obviously, when you've got Cabrera and Martinez hitting in front of you, that's going to give you some RBI opportunities. But what it does for the Tigers is really lengthen their lineup. Now that 3, 4, 5 is as good as any in the big leagues. And just watching him play for an entire season in the middle of that Tigers lineup, it's going to be fun next year.
Mario Impemba, Fox Sports Detroit, play-by-play voice for the Tigers, has been kind enough to join us. Now, Mario, I'm interested to get your opinion on something that's kind of talked about a lot by fans. Are you a Sabermetrics guy? A lot of fans like myself are starting to learn a little bit more about what WAR is, on-base percentage. For me, I kind of just go with the basic eye test. If a player can play and he puts up decent stats and he can help his team win, then you kind of can tell. But right now, there's a big wave, a big movement of guys that are just Sabermetrics. This is what will tell you if a player is successful. I'm just curious, what's your take on Sabermetrics? And especially on Fox Sports Net, they even did a broadcast where it was Sabermetric centered.
Yeah, we have this conversation every year amongst us, our production people, our folks that come up with the graphics, and of course, the producers, directors, and the on-air guys, Rod Allen and myself. And, we're trying to find a common ground. The problem with us getting very deep into Sabermetrics on the air is that a lot of times, a lot of these metrics take a while to explain. And we just don't have that luxury on television. We can't take the time it really needs, to explain what these metrics mean. And sometimes, I got to be honest with you, I don't know what they mean. I mean, it takes a lot of research, and I think there's a happy balance. I think we started to incorporate some. We're talking about WAR a little bit more. We're talking about batting average with balls in play a little bit more. We're talking about line drive percentage a little bit more. So we're starting to incorporate that in our telecast. I think 2 years ago, when I think back to the MVP race with Mike Trout and Miguel Cabrera, Cabrera won the Triple Crown a couple of years ago, yet Trout had a bigger WAR or a higher WAR, and many people thought Trout should have won the MVP, and most of those were, the people they were in the Sabermetrics, yet those that kind of did the eye test, as you say, were in the corner of Miguel Cabrera. I have always been an eye test guy. I mean, I can tell if a guy can play or he can't just by watching him over the course of the year. But I am finding out that these numbers, these advanced metrics, do have their place in baseball. And the only proof you need is that every major league team now has a numbers person in their front office crunching these numbers. I even heard a former general manager on television the other day citing how he would put his lineup and his roster together in the offseason based upon a lot of these metrics, and especially WAR. So it's becoming a bigger part of the game. You can't resist it. I think it does have some merit. It has a lot of merit, actually. The problem for us is it's very difficult sometimes to explain those in a 3-hour broadcast in a concise way, and that's the challenge we have.
Gotcha. I agree with you, and it'll be interesting to see where it takes us in the future. Now, the biggest question remaining now for the Tigers in the offseason is the Max Scherzer contract situation. Little rumors, little talk going around that the Yankees may throw their hat in the ring for Max Scherzer. In your heart of hearts, do you think Max Scherzer will be a Tiger when spring training starts?
If I were to answer that question, honestly, I'd probably say no. But then again, I thought there was no way the Tigers would ever trade Prince Fielder a couple of years ago either. So anything can happen. I do know this. Mr. Ilitch is a guy that likes his stars. He likes putting a great team on the field, and he's not afraid to open up the wallet. And so in that respect, I would not bet against it happening. I just wouldn't bet for it happening. I think that now when you look at the way the Tigers payroll is structured, yes, he has put a lot of money forth that has Mike Ilitch, but there is a limit. And you've got a Verlander making a lot of money. You've got a Cabrera making a lot of money. Now you just signed Victor Martinez. I don't know if the Max Scherzer deal fits in to what the Tigers are trying to do. Without Max Scherzer, there's still a very solid rotation in Verlander, Price, Porcello, and Sanchez, and whoever's in that number 5 spot. But in my heart of hearts, I don't see it happening. But if we were to show up in spring camp in March and Max Scherzer was wearing a Tigers uniform, I wouldn't totally be stunned. I just don't see it, though.
Now, Mario, I'll get you out of here on this. Kansas City had a great season, lots of surprises. They made a deep run all the way, getting just short of winning the World Series, losing in 7 games. Do you think they'll be around nagging the Tigers all next season, or will the Tigers still keep them under our thumb and continue to dominate the AL Central?
No, I think they'll be nagging. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And I also think Cleveland's going to have a pretty good shot at winning the division again next year as well. I think that the gap has closed a little bit between the Tigers and the rest of the Central Division. They still have a relatively young team due to the Royals. They still have some good talent, and they still have those guys at the back end of their bullpen that are just ridiculous. And Holland, Davis, Herrera. even Finnegan pitched really well toward the end of the season of the playoffs, and now he's become a pretty good arm in their bullpen, and Collins as well. But they still have a couple pretty good arms top of that rotation. When you look at Yordan Ventura and Danny Duffy, even if Shields doesn't come back, they still have a pretty good solid four. Salvador Perez, for me, is the best catcher in the American League, and they got a lot of speed. So I don't think the Royals are going anywhere. I think they'll certainly have a shot to win the Central next year. I think the Tigers somehow, some way, have to find a way to upgrade that bullpen. I know Bruce Rondon is coming back, but if they can kind of get on a par with the Royals toward the back end of games, they can win the division again. But I think next year more so than any other year, it's going to be a real battle from start to finish.
Mario, thank you so much for your time tonight. We hope to have you on again. You're more than welcome on the Detroit Sports Podcast to talk about Tigers baseball. We enjoy your work. We enjoy your enthusiasm for the game. And let's go Tigers. Let's hope for some future success.
All right, John, I appreciate it. Thanks for calling. Call anytime.
Thanks, Mario. Have a good night.
All right, man. Take care.
Want to thank Mario Impemba. We greatly appreciate his time, and he gave us a lot of great insight. Hopefully we get a chance to talk to him in the future. Cuz, great podcast. We had Mario Impemba and Freddie Coleman earlier. All right, Cuz, we did pretty good last week. I am still leading in the NFL Pick'em Challenge. I am leading 29-26. I do go first. So if I have picked something that you have picked, it's going to behoove you to really think outside the box and try to pick outside of what I do, because otherwise you're going to lose and you're going to be donning a Michigan State jersey next year. Don't be afraid, but it's looking like I'm going to take this down unless I really stumble and you make a comeback. So let's kick it off. Let's see what happens. With my first pick, I'm going to continue with picking teams that I think are going to dominate lesser opponents. San Diego at home should work St. Louis. I don't think that St. Louis is going to ride that momentum. Although they played a great game versus Denver, but I don't think they're going to go on the road at San Diego and do some damage. So with my first pick, I'm taking the San Diego Chargers over the Rams.
With my first pick, I'm going to go with the Philadelphia Eagles over the Tennessee Titans. Titans got worked by Pittsburgh in their run game. I think Philadelphia is going to do much of the same. On top of it, the Titans are working off a short week. So take the Philadelphia Eagles over the Tennessee Titans.
Dallas is going to be coming off the bye week. They're going to be hungry, and I don't believe that they are going to have any trouble with the New York Giants. Their offense, talk about struggling on offense. They are horrific. And although they got a nice piece in Odell Beckham Jr., I don't think that they're going to be able to keep up with the Dallas Cowboy Express. Dez Bryant is trying to earn that contract. He don't want no one to test him. He don't want the Dallas Cowboys testing his loyalty. They're going to ball out, and DeMarco Murray balls to the wall. So with my second pick, I'm taking the Dallas Cowboys -3 over the Giants.
All right, with my next pick, I'm hopping aboard your Indianapolis Colts train and want to ride Andrew Luck over the Jacksonville Jags.
I'm going to go with a team that's rolling. I don't like to pick games where the point spread is really large, but Green Bay is rolling. I think they're going to go into Minnesota and put up another 40 points. I don't think Minnesota can keep up. So I think Green Bay is on a roll like no other. And with the play of Aaron Rodgers, he might not see the second half of this game. He might be done in the first half because he could go off for another 5 touchdowns. And he's playing great, and he's one of the reasons why Matthew Stafford is being criticized so much, because dude is balling, and he's throwing the ball all over the place. So with my third pick, I'm taking the Green Bay Packers -10 over the Minnesota Vikings.
Last week, the Denver Broncos were embarrassed. You don't embarrass Peyton Manning 2 weeks in a row. I think Denver steamrolls the Miami Dolphins. So take the Denver Broncos to sit there and reclaim some of their claim to fame and stick out their chest and beat it one more time.
Now, this is the tough part of this challenge. We're picking versus the spread, and the spread is 7. Can the Lions keep up with the New England Patriots? One of those times, I just don't think so. I think that the Patriots could win by 2 touchdowns or more. I know that the defense has played really well, but New England on the road. So I'm thinking if it's like 20-14, it's 6. I'm going to take New England -7 over the Lions. I think they win by 10 points or more, 30-20.
Remember a few years ago for Thanksgiving when the Detroit Lions played the New England Patriots?
I do recall.
That was a totally different Lions team. It was a totally different New England team. Some of the pieces are still there. Some of the pieces are still similar. I think this Detroit Lions team is better than that Detroit Lions team. And I don't think this New England Patriots team is as good as that New England Patriots team. However, I think Tom Brady is just a little bit more fired up and a little bit more angry this time around. However, I'm going to take the Detroit Lions +7 to keep it close. I think they lose, but I think they keep it within a touchdown. So I'm going to go with the Detroit Lions over the New England Patriots.
Ooh, this could be a pivotal week because you could get back in it and tie me up.
I know, we went totally different this week. Normally we're picking the same exact games.
Good challenge, and I think this week could be a week you catch up if I falter. So stay tuned. Week by week, we do the NFL Pick'em Challenge every single week. I want to thank everyone that's downloaded this podcast. Thank you to everyone that's been visiting our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com, and definitely support those that support us. Check out Those Detroit Guys podcast every Wednesday. Check out the writers at the Detroit Sports Nation. Great content. They're just as dedicated as we are at DetroitSportsNation.com. Thank you for downloading this podcast every Thursday and telling a friend. That keeps us motivated to keep doing great podcasts for the listeners and followers. For the Jock, Adam Strozinski, I am the Doc, John Macaroon. I want to thank Freddie Coleman from ESPN Radio and Mario Impemba from Fox Sports Detroit. This has been another episode of the Detroit Sports Podcast.
Go Lions.
You're the future of our business, and I know when you guys have a podcast like this, our future is in good hands.